Welcome, everybody, to another amazing episode of Wellness Warriors. I'm Dr. Veronique Desonier, better known as Dr. V, and founder of breastcancerconqueror.com and co-founder of My Breast Brand. Today, I have an amazing guest on our show, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. She wrote this amazing book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. I actually used this book on our group coaching call last month, and we talked about some very interesting feelings that a lot of us have. Dr. Joan is a two-time TEDx speaker, and I've watched her talks, which are just really engaging and so informative. She's also a member of the Association of Transformational Leaders. She has been featured in documentaries like I Am, The Miracle Mindset. She's also been seen on PBS, the OWN Network, and CNN's American Morning. She's a licensed psychologist in California, and her theme and her forte is about building confidence, emotional strength, resilience, and achieving emotional and relationship mastery. That's a mouthful. Welcome, Joan. Thank you so much for being here.
I love being with you. Thanks so much.
So we've got so many things to talk about.
Okay.
I mean, you're just such a wealth of information when it comes to dealing with our emotions. So I want to start with one about confidence. You know, with the community that we have, a lot of women walk into their journey, whether it's preventative journey or healing journey, they oftentimes lack confidence about themselves, about what they're doing, their choices, their relationship, their life. So let's talk about developing confidence. It's almost counterintuitive because it's, you know, we often think that, well, once I do this, then I can be confident. But we really have to build our confidence in order to achieve our goals. So let's talk on that first.
Well, let me go a couple different directions with your comment and question there. I think of confidence as the deep sense that we can handle the emotional outcome of whatever we face or whatever we pursue. And obviously cancer falls like directly under that because we're facing that, right? The thing, if I were going to put neon around something, I would be highlighting the notion that it's the emotional outcome is what we're talking about. And then that builds right into kind of my whole approach. And you're right. It is a little bit either paradoxical or kind of ironic the way confidence works. I really wrestled with this question from childhood on because I was an exquisitely shy child. So and got bullied. So those two things didn't work out so well for me, right? And I had to figure stuff out because I didn't fit in. And I look over to my side and go, God, they look confident. How does one do that? So lifelong question, and a second question for me was, what's the deal with unpleasant, once I got into work professionally, what's the deal with unpleasant feelings? How come most of us struggle with that? And then I realized that answering the second question was really answering the first question too. So confidence is a little bit paradoxical. It's not that we're confident and then we speak. It's not that we're confident and then we take an action. The truth be told, it's as we speak, so through speaking and by taking actions or taking risks, that's actually how we develop confidence. And the key here is that it means we have to deal with the unpleasant feeling outcome of stuff not working out to actually continue to develop that deep sense that we can handle things. I hope that wasn't too much of a mouthful.
No, that's great. That's great. So how would you take a person who's struggling with confidence? Tell me about the process that you take.
Sure. Actually, that's a super question, because if somebody says that to me, I already know that they're probably wrestling with or having trouble dealing with unpleasant feelings. So just someone saying, I'm not confident, equals, in my mind, I'm having trouble dealing with unpleasant feelings. So my next question is, do you have a hard time with unpleasant feelings? Most of the times I'll get a yes. And then it means, all right, then let's talk about how you manage that better so that you can get the foundation of what it takes to be confident. And for me, this takes me right into the approach, because I talk about that as a formula: 1 choice, 8 feelings, 90 seconds.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those difficult feelings and unpleasant feelings that you walk people through.
Okay, cool. So I talk about 8 feelings. So that was so 1 choice, we're choosing awareness over avoidance. And it's awareness of, to be in touch with and aware of and in touch with as much of your moment-to-moment experience as you can bear. So awareness, not avoidance. And then the 8 feelings, and the 8 feelings are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration.
Check, check, check.
Right. Yeah, me too.
You got them pegged.
Me too. And then the question is like, why these 8? And it's these 8 because they're the most common spontaneous feeling outcomes or feeling reactions to things not turning out the way we want or the way we feel we might need.
Interesting.
So think about it. On a day-to-day basis, they're probably the most common things that we experience.
Right.
So if I can, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
If I can help somebody experience that on a day-to-day basis, they got most of the ground covered.
So how do we, you said don't avoid.
Correct.
Confront them and deal with them. So how does one deal with those, not avoiding those feelings? Like, how do we meet those head on?
Sure. Here's the key in my mind. The first is understanding that most of us come to understand what we're feeling emotionally through bodily sensation. So think embarrassment, and you've got this heat rushing up your chest, and maybe it's turning red, and your face turns red, and you feel all the heat. So the heat, and for others seeing it, the redness are bodily sensations, right?
Right.
The sensation is the heat for you particularly. Someone else seeing it would see the redness. Or think tightening of your hands or your jaw or your body when you get angry, or even a rush of heat in your whole body when you get angry. Or think heaviness at the chest when you might feel disappointed or sad, something like that. Yeah. So we come to know what we're feeling emotionally through bodily sensation. But again, so I was always talking to people about ride the waves of feeling. What I didn't know until the neuroscience came out was really what I was asking them to do was to ride the waves of bodily sensations. But again, people want to go, oh no, too hard, it's going to last permanently. It's like, no, it's actually not. And here's the beauty of it. A neuroscientist by the name of Jill Bolte Taylor, Harvard-trained neuroscientist, made the observation that when a feeling gets triggered, what ends up happening is a rush of biochemicals into our bloodstream. It's that rush that activates those bodily sensations. But there's a flush of those same biochemicals out of the bloodstream in roughly 90 seconds. So here's the beauty of it, Veronique. It's that if someone is open to, again, staying present, being aware of what they're experiencing, then it means riding one or more 90-second bodily sensation waves of one or more of 8 unpleasant feelings. And they can stay present to it and then gain the insights or whatever else needs to happen to move their way through those feelings. That's all it takes.
And that's the title, 90 seconds, right?
That's 90 seconds. Absolutely, yes. Yep.
No, I love that. When I heard you speak about that at our mastermind business meeting, it was like an aha moment, because we think unpleasant feelings, they're going to last forever. But when you can just ride the wave, like you say, 90 seconds, you can breathe through it.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, that's the thing I recommend most, is to allow yourself to take deep breaths while you're staying present to the experience. And then the other thing I always emphasize is it's one or more waves. So don't get lost and hooked into the idea that it's just one. Understanding you've just got to be open to other stuff may surface.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about grief, because you talk about this in your book. And women that are diagnosed with breast cancer definitely go through a grieving process, because there's so many emotions. There's, loss of what their life was like before, and the fear of what's going to happen in the future, and what's happening to their body. So there's a lot of grief. So let's talk about grief, and how is it, what's your opinion, and the best way to manage grief?
When I think of a kind of pure grief, and I will out myself here to join your community, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016. So I know of the experience of which you speak. So I'm very much a part of again, none of us wanted to join that community, but I'm part of that community, right?
Right.
And when I think about grief, what I think about when it's kind of in a pure form, I think of sadness, helplessness, anger, and disappointment. So that those are the four feelings I think that are, and I'm sure there are others, but that are most central to the experience of grief. And so what does it invite us to do? It invites us to stay present, to really looking deeply at our lives, and it means staying present to the feelings that brings up. And I went through my own panic moments, if you will. It's like, what does this mean about my life? What does this mean about living? I'm working on the book. I'm writing the book at this time, and it's like I had so many good things happening for me at the same time that I was confronting this illness. So I had to stay present to when I would go through all these kind of questions and the experience of sadness and just move my way through all that kind of stuff in its pure form. So my thing with this is that you can stay present to it by just allowing yourself to be with those feelings when they're in your field, when you're aware of them. The other stuff I talk about in chapter 8 in the book, the grief book, the grief is what I also call about disguised grief, and we can tap into that too.
Yes. Let's talk about disguised grief, because I think that's very important. So many of us stuff our emotions, right? We have the facade, everything's fine, but deep inside we're really grieving.
Right. And, I know a lot of people talk about kind of the emotional connection to cancer too. Yeah. So, and lots of times that it involves feelings that may be suppressed. So one of the ways I like to think about this is I talk about like two kinds of categories of what I call disguised grief. And the first is known by what I call grief signal words. So if you have longstanding anger or hurt, and it hasn't been resolved yet, if you describe yourself as being bitter or have bitterness, or resentful or resentfulness, or holding grudges, or you're cynical and sarcastic, or again, I think there's 14 or 15 that I list in the book, then think about every one of those words as actually grief. What's underneath is grief. That's why I'm calling it disguised grief. So that's one way I think about it. The second way I think about it is that we are actually grieving over what we got. So think about, again, episodes or events or experiences in your life that were difficult and again, potentially very much life-changing, and not necessarily in a good way. You may have gotten benefits from it, but I know that as soon as I say what I'm going to say, you're going to be able to think of the things that I'm talking about here. So it's grieving over what you got and didn't deserve. So this would be the bad stuff. Mm-hmm. Chaotic upbringing, alcoholic parent, drug use, substance use, all the different kinds of abuse we can experience. That's what I'm talking about here. Grieving over what you got and didn't deserve. And then there's grieving over what you deserved and didn't get. The praise, the support, the consistent love, somebody attending your games or your cheerleading squad competition or tennis match or your piano recital or whatever it is. Or just, hey, good job, and encouragement. And grieving over what never was. So think facts and circumstances of your life as you're growing up, grieving over what is not now. It's kind of the same thing, facts and circumstances of your life right now, and then grieving over what may never be. All of that I put under disguised grief.
All right. And so how do we heal from our grief?
I think it's super important to do what I call making sense of your life story. So in the book, I talk about taking kind of an experience or an event or a series of events, and then I literally walk you through a minimum of like 9 to 12 questions to have you consider what the experience that you went through, the kind of the meaning and the impact that it had on your life. And then the key here is across time. The time when it occurred, when it, as you aged, and then even up to right now. How is that experience, or how is that experience affecting you? And then I think once people go through that, then they are able to start to glean out. And I ask people to do this, once they understand the meaning and impact, then I ask them to extract the good. You know, lots of times when people, for instance, grow up in chaotic families, they become super organized and great students. So while the one thing was bad, it led to some character development and other qualities and attributes that are really great. So it's being able to kind of tease out or glean those good elements, and then I walk people through this whole notion of then I think people can genuinely forgive.
I love that. I love that.
And I don't think true forgiveness happens until we understand the impact and meaning it had on our lives. And what I'm talking about here is not just forgiving the other, it's actually forgiving yourself. And so it's forgiving yourself, forgiving whoever else was involved, and then being able to free yourself from your old life story and forge new images of who you want to become. And I walk people through that whole thing in the chapter. And
that is so important, because so many of us cling to our story.
Yep. Oh my God, yes.
Because that's, we think that is what made us. But if you can, like I use the term, what is the gift? What is the gift that this situation or this experience has brought you? Then you can glean, like you say, it made you a better person in what way. So. Yeah.
Right. And I would say the same thing, that you can replace the word grief if you want, and put the word cancer in there, and then work through all the same questions relative to cancer, and go, it's like, what was the impact of the diagnosis? What is the meaning I'm attaching to this? And what happened in the moment when I heard how, and as I've gone through parts of this process, how has it changed me? And what new learnings can I take from this? And then what do you want to change? I mean, on a very concrete level, for me, it's like I'd been commuting for 12 years, and the commute was horrible. I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I literally went down from an hour plus commute in one direction to 3 to 12 minutes.
Love it.
But would I have done it if I hadn't gotten the diagnosis? Probably not. I would have lived in something I actually didn't like. So I would say do it both ways. Use the grief chapter to go through the genuine other life experiences that you've been through, and come back around and replace the word grief and put the word cancer in there, and then use those same questions to make your way through understanding the cancer's impact.
That's huge. That's huge. Very, very good work. All right, let's talk about fear and anxiety. We know that obviously cancer diagnosis can bring lots of fear and anxiety, or just, everyday life itself. People struggle with that, with anxiety and stress. So let's talk about that. How do you help people become more resilient and deal with that anxiety?
My first thing is actually to change the language, believe it or not. Okay. So I'm a big fan of using language that moves us in the direction of where we want to go. So it's to not use the language that actually is to not use the language of where we don't want to go, and to use the language of that we do want to go. So so I'll try to kind of clarify what I mean by that. So most of the times people will use the word fear. I'm fearful of public speaking, as an example. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what psychology says fear is basically danger or life threat in the moment right now. Well, public speaking doesn't count as one of those dangers or life threats. So don't use the language of fear. And so it's misused, overused. You're actually not feeling fear. You can make yourself feel fear, but the truth is you're not in danger or life threat in those moments. The next most obvious one to use is anxiety. And anxiety, and it fits for the situation, but I'm going to challenge this one too. Anxiety, psychology talks about as diffuse apprehension of the future. True when anybody gets a diagnosis, a health diagnosis. And it's kind of anticipating a negative outcome or negative event. Okay, that fits, except if I were to turn around and you and Veronique and 10 other people were in the room, and I asked all 11 of you what you meant by anxiety, I'd probably get 11 different answers.
Right.
So what I began to understand is that if they selected from the 8, the next obvious one people would choose is I feel vulnerable, meaning I could be hurt. So what I invite people to do is stop misusing and overusing the words of fear and anxiety. Instead, call it what it is, which is I feel vulnerable. So heck yeah, does a health diagnosis mean I feel vulnerable? You bet. Absolutely. Why? Because I could be hurt. I could experience things I really don't want to be experiencing. And then the beauty of it is that if you know you're feeling vulnerable, then the way you handle vulnerability is to be able to experience and move through those other 7 feelings. And that's the key. And when you know you can tolerate the vulnerability, then you are actually at your greatest strength. So no fear, no anxiety, vulnerability. If it's not vulnerability, it's bound to be one or more of the other 7 feelings. And if it is vulnerability, then just knowing you can handle the other 7 feelings helps you tolerate that state of vulnerability.
That's so true. Words have such a huge impact. Sometimes I hear women say my cancer or my diagnosis, and it's like, no, it's not yours. Don't own it. It's the cancer, the diagnosis.
Right.
So you don't want to own that. You don't want to
own it. Yeah, right. So yes, absolutely. So let's put it outside of ourselves.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right. Last thing I want to talk about is about being assertive and being able to speak up. Because so many women, when they're on their healing journey, I mean, their life, becomes so much busier, and that they've got to do the juicing and the enemas and the supplements and the meditation and the exercise and all these extra things that are added into their already busy life.
Right.
And it's important for them to ask for help, whether it's from their friends, their family, their children, whatever. But so many of them are afraid to ask for help. They're not being assertive. So how can we help women become more assertive and to express their needs when they're on a healing journey?
So can I blend a couple things here?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Somebody says, I'm not confident. I know they're not being comfortable with the 8 unpleasant feelings. Someone says, I'm anxious. I know that not only are they not comfortable with the 8 unpleasant feelings, they're also not speaking up. And same is probably true with confidence too, that they're probably not speaking up. So so let me walk through a couple different things here. I look at emotional strength as one, being able to move through and experience and move through those 8 unpleasant feelings. And that's just what I call feeling capable. Because my experience is that people don't feel as capable in the world if they're not able to handle the emotional outcome. Think 8 unpleasant feelings.
Okay.
The second part of emotional strength is what I call being resourceful. In essence, being resourceful is kind of acknowledging our vulnerability, acknowledging our humanness and our need for dependence, or dealing with the experience of dependence, and that it means being able to acknowledge your limitations and ask for help. So being resourceful equals asking for help. Being capable equals I can manage the 8 unpleasant feelings. Both, in my mind, are your definition of emotional strength. So we're not alone. We don't succeed alone. We need people. It's not one or the other. It is both, being independent and dependent. So that's the first part of it. You're emotionally strong when you ask for help. So first, you've got to get that. The second part of it, then, around the speaking up piece, is that what I realized is that speaking up really is the same thing as I'm not tolerating those 8 unpleasant feelings. So let me kind of walk you through it. So think of if I need to speak up, even if it's kind of raising my hand in a classroom or a public meeting or whatever it is to say something, then I have to be willing to tolerate the discomfort of my own emotional discomfort in order to speak up. So think vulnerable. Think I don't want to be embarrassed, 2 of the 8, or ridiculed, so that maybe that's shame, right? Mm-hmm. So that to speak up in the first place means you have to tolerate the 8 unpleasant feelings. In order to have a conversation, it's so in this case also asking for help, or just saying I need to go here, and then where you start to kind of put a stake in the ground and make statements instead of always asking. It means not only tolerating the discomfort of your own emotional discomfort, it means tolerating the discomfort of someone else's emotional discomfort simultaneously. Same 8 unpleasant feelings, right? So when you know that you can handle your own and are willing to be in it, then you know that you can actually handle someone else's. And what are we back down to? The same 8 unpleasant feelings. That's the key to speaking up, being able to know that you have the capacity to experience and move through those 8.
Awesome. Very interesting. Wow, this has been really good, really helpful. And if it's okay, I'm going to use some of your work at our retreat.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I think the whole section on grief is just so important.
Yep.
So if people want to learn more about you and your book, where can they find you?
The most immediate place is drjoanrosenberg.com.
Okay.
They go there. They can access the book that way. I'm on Instagram. There's Life You Love Facebook group. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and what's the other big one? Facebook. It's Dr. J. Rosenberg, or the group on Facebook. It's Dr. Joan Rosenberg on Twitter, on Instagram, and most other LinkedIn. And then there's 2 YouTube talks. There's the 90 Seconds book website. I'm kind of all
everywhere. The TEDx talks that are amazing.
Yeah.
And I understand that you're giving away the first chapter of your book.
Yes, I believe if somebody goes to Dr. Joan Rosenberg /gift. I believe that they can get a copy of chapter 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we publish the podcast, then we'll make sure that those links are there so people.
Yeah, there's a couple different things there. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You've been amazing. I love your wisdom and your thought process, and I look forward to sharing this to our community and get some positive feedback. So thanks.
Awesome. For your time, I look forward to hearing, and please feel my gratitude. Thank you so much for your interest and support.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Till next time, this is Dr. V sending you a big healing heart hug. Bye-bye.